Hello, everyone, and welcome to our third session of the Tennessee Farmers Market Vendor Boot Camp. Today is Tuesday, January 24th, and today we have a presentation by Billy Trout with the Tennessee Department of Revenue, Taxpayer Services on sales tax. My name is Rachel Painter, and I'm a specialist with the UT Extension Center for Profitable Agriculture. I work on value-added agriculture marketing, and I'm here to assist you and farmers across the state in developing their value-added enterprises. This program is a part of the TAEP cost share program. This is an educational requirement. So if you complete 5 of the 6 one-hour sessions and complete the evaluation survey for each of those 5 sessions, you would qualify for a special requirement educational credit. You do need 2 special requirement educational credits in order to qualify for the TAEP cost share for application B. If you have any questions about the TAEP cost share program, you can contact the Tennessee Department of Agriculture at producer.diversification@tn.gov. Again, I work with the UT Extension Center for Profitable Agriculture as a specialist, and you can, again, learn more about our programs and educational classes coming up at cpa.tennessee.edu. You can also follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/valueaddedag to learn more about educational classes coming up and how we create an impact across the state. Of course, we not only have CPA hosting this, but we also collaborate with our UT TSU extension agents across the state. So you can find your local agent at utextension.tennessee.edu. And again, we have an office in all 95 counties in Tennessee with a local agent ready to help you. We also work closely with the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, and you can find more about their programs, including the Pick Tennessee Products platform, at tn.gov or picktnproducts.org. We also work closely with the Tennessee Association of Farmers Markets to put on this program and learn more about what you all need to learn. So you can find more about their association at tnfarmersmarkets.org. And we also have Casey, the president, joining us this Thursday for the next session. Again, our program today is about sales tax at farmers markets, and we have Mr. Billy Trout from the Tennessee Department of Revenue, Taxpayer Services, joining us to talk more about what you need to know about sales tax at farmers markets.
Well, good morning. It's good to be with you guys today. I hope everybody can hear me okay. So today, and thanks, by the way, for all of you that are attending and for UT Ag for inviting us to come and talk to you about this very important agricultural exemption situation that we have for our farmers, our nursery operators, and our timber harvesters that are out there too. So this presentation, we have information on our website. We're also, just to let you know, we're having a webinar, ironically, about this very same subject next week for the general public. So if you'd like to attend that, you can go out to our website and register for that. I would like to point out too, and I think Rachel would echo this too, that the credits that we offer at the Department of Revenue are not the same as for the program that she just described. So if you're trying to get credits for attending this class, make sure you do what Rachel says and follow all the appropriate guidelines there, okay? Thank you very much. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of things relative to this. For the agricultural exemption, there's basically a few different things that we're involved with at the Department of Revenue relative to what you guys do out there in agriculture. So the first would be sales tax, and of course, you as a farmer or harvester or nursery operator, you may qualify to get certain purchases exempt from sales tax. And that is what we're going to be talking about mostly today, okay? There's also a tax obligation on farming operations, or really any business in Tennessee that's set up as an LLC or a limited partnership or a limited liability partnership. And the information that you see here on this slide, it gets a little complicated. We're not going to go through a lot of that today, but there is this franchise and excise tax. That's what F&E stands for, okay? And you could be subject to that as well. And we do have information on our website in our webinar section, as it says there on screen. And then finally, we have business tax, and business tax applies to gross sales, in some cases, people that are selling items of tangible personal property that are not exempt. So when you're talking about the exemption for sales tax, there's also an exemption for business tax for the sales of livestock, horses, poultry. You see the information here at the bottom of this slide. And if it's sold directly from your farming operation or from you as a producer, breeder, or trainer, then you're going to not be subject to business tax and not have to have a business license. So typically in a lot of agricultural operations, you're not going to need to have business tax. You might need the franchise and excise tax if you're set up as an LLC, an LP, or an LLP. And you do want a sales tax exemption, which again is going to be the majority of what we're going to be talking about today. And I think this will be very helpful to you to understand what you have to do to qualify. Okay. So there was some recent legislation that was passed. It was actually passed last spring by the Tennessee legislature. And it says that beginning 1/1/23, which was just a few weeks ago here as we're recording this and presenting this information today, qualifying farmers, timber harvesters, and nursery operators may purchase most items of tangible personal property used primarily, which is more than 50% in agricultural operations, exempt from sales tax. Now, this is very similar to the way it's been since, I believe, 2007. So it's been a long time since the legislature made any major changes to this. But when we talk about this change here in just a little bit, you'll see that this exemption is a little wider than it was under the previous law. And we'll get into some of the details here in just a minute. We're going to talk about qualifying for the exemption and how to make the application for it, what products may or may not be exempt using the certificate, and how you renew it, and some different frequently asked questions. But in this agricultural manual that you see on your screen here too, if you were to go to our website under tax resources, you will find our tax manuals, and you will find the updated manual that was last updated in November of 22 that will give you the best information out there on this whole process. Okay. All right. So the first step in getting this sales tax exemption is to actually apply for it. Sounds pretty simple, right? So what you see here on screen now is a copy of the application for an agricultural sales and use tax exemption. So it is a paper application, which you can complete and you can mail back to us. But what we would ask you to probably do, if you can scan it using your scanner or on your printer there or whatever you've got, send us a copy of this that's completed and signed along with any other documents. And we'll talk about what's needed here in just a few minutes on that too. Okay. But the application form is super, super important to fill out correctly. And you'll notice that there's several different lines on here. The one thing I'll call to your attention right now, we'll probably emphasize it one more time here too. Under number 8, it says that an applicant must meet at least one of the criteria below to qualify for the exemption. And then in bold, it says you must submit proper documentation with the application. So if you check one of these boxes off and you don't send in the proper documentation, they're going to reject it. Okay. They'll send you a letter saying, hey, we got to have more information. And here we go again, back and forth, right? So you don't want to do that. You just want to go ahead and get all your information in up front here too. So again, we'll talk some more about that here in just a little bit as well. So let's just kind of break this apart here and talk about the different ways that you can qualify for this exemption. So the first exemption, or the first criteria, I guess you could say, is that you as an owner or a lessee of agricultural land, you have to have at least $1,500 or more of agricultural products produced and sold during a year, including any payments that you get from government sources. So the required documentation includes proof of any government payments or copies of tax returns reflecting the income information. So when you file your federal IRS form, typically you'll do a Schedule F as in Frank. I think of F as in farm. So that's the way that you can provide us proof that you have produced at least $1,500 of sales of agricultural products during that year. And then, of course, another criteria here is that you could provide for hire custom agricultural services. You could be someone who plows land, plants or harvests or does maintenance like bush hogs, stuff like that. So you can actually do that. So if you have got proof of those type of services that you provide, copies of any 1099 forms, which typically would be given to you for non-employee compensation for different work that you would have done for different folks, that proves that you are providing this type of service. Okay. Another really good way to qualify for this is to basically have what I call greenbelt land. And a lot of you might know what that means. But so if you have land that qualifies for greenbelt taxation, and the technical name of that is the Agricultural Forest and Open Space Land of 1976, but that's what that is. So usually you can get something from the property assessor's office for your property taxes that will show that that land is greenbelt. And if it is greenbelt, you're going to qualify. So that's a slam dunk. Okay, so make sure that you send in an application form with that documentation if that applies to you too. And then, of course, in a little bit more breakout here, if your income tax return contains business activity on that Schedule F, and we kind of talked about that a minute ago too, but there's also a form 4835 for farm rental activity. So you may be renting your farm out to someone else and receiving rental income from that farm. If you file that 4835 form with your IRS return, you will qualify in that manner as well. Okay. Then the catch-all, which is number 5 here, otherwise establish active engagement in the business of raising, harvesting, or otherwise producing agricultural commodities. So if you can't meet any of the other criteria, what we ask you to do is to provide some very specific information to us. And that is such as the date that you actually acquired your land, how many acres that you're using for crops or for livestock, how many head of livestock you're producing or that you currently have on property. Any type of planning that you might do that might project when you're going to sell your first agricultural product and the projected income from that, and then a marketing plan. So, in other words, how are you going to sell what you're raising or what you're producing, that type of stuff too. So we do ask you to get some real delicate details, I guess you could say, under this number 5. And it's a little bit harder to explain this situation than it is some of the others. But nevertheless, before I go any further, let me just tell you what we want to do is we want to be very encouraging to tell you to submit your application form if you think you qualify. Okay. We would much rather go back and forth with you a time or two to get the proper information to help make a good determination for you and to not just reject it or something like that. So in other words, don't be afraid to put in for the application if you qualify for it. And we want you to do that. And again, the whole idea behind this is so that you can acquire products that you use in your operation and not have to pay sales tax on those items. Okay. All right. So once you get your certificate, once you actually receive that, It's going to notify anyone that you present that certificate to that you are exempt from sales tax for these agricultural items. They're valid for a 4-year period, and there's an expiration date that's printed on every one of these periods. And they renew every once in a while. I don't remember exactly where we are in the renewal process right now, but what'll happen is several months before your certificate renews, typically what we do is send another certificate out to your address that we have on file and say, hey, here's your new one. And if anything changed or you're no longer in farming or agricultural business anymore, let us know and we'll cancel it out. So you don't have to actually send in another application form. We'll take what you've already got on file and go ahead and recertify it, so to speak, there too. And then, of course, you don't want to use any older cards once we send you new things out. And then one thing to point out on this too is that the certificate does have little tear-off cards at the bottom of the first page that you can use and just put in your wallet. And those are the wallet cards. And you can use those when you're making tax-exempt purchases. Or you can actually use a copy of the whole certificate too. One best practice thing, if I don't point this out later, I'll tell you right now, is to maybe make photocopies of what we send to you and just use photocopies when you're going to different suppliers to get this sort of information. That way, if they want to keep a copy of it, they can keep your photocopy, and then it's just a lot easier that way. Okay? Okay. So if you are buying an item that is free of sales tax, you've got to basically present a copy of that certificate of exemption or that card. There's also one other thing we bring up here that's sort of obtuse, but there are certain farming operations that have registered nationally, and they have actually gotten a certificate of exemption through this streamlined sales tax project. I bring it up just because it's in the law. But if you would just refer back to what I said earlier and use a copy of your certificate that we give you or the card that's at the bottom, that would be the thing. Now, if you're a seller and you're providing these materials to you as a qualified farmer or nursery operator or timber harvester, you're going to keep a copy of the documents on file along with the name and address and description of the purchases for every invoice. And then, of course, like I said earlier, keep that original in a file back at your office there so that you have that on file. And of course, if you ever need a reprint or something and you need something from that, you can call us and we'll be glad to get it to you. Okay? Hope that helps you out. Okay, so now we're going to get down to the nitty gritty. Okay, these are things that you could buy once you have qualified and you have your certificate in hand and you're using this property principally more than 50% of the time to produce agricultural products. Okay, so the first thing on here is machinery, equipment, and other tangible personal property used to produce these things. Okay. Typically, you're thinking about tractors and, discs and bush hogs and, oh my goodness, the list goes on and on for you guys because, you have to buy quite a bit of equipment in order to perform what you're doing in an agricultural way. That equipment is generally going to qualify. We'll talk about some things that don't qualify in a few minutes there too. But the second check mark here is a big change. Okay. And this is building and fencing material. And I don't know why we said fencing material twice on this slide, but we did. But anyway, so building and fencing material is now exempt and didn't used to be that way. But on 1/1/23, this changed. So you as a qualified farmer, nursery operator, timber harvester, if you're acquiring building and fencing material that you're using in your operation to secure livestock, to provide shelter or to protect crops that you've harvested, things of that nature, you can buy it with the agricultural exemption form tax-free. You can buy it. Now, The notice that we mentioned earlier that talked about this change in one of the earlier slides, and you can refer to it on our website as well, mentions very specifically that contractors that are working for you cannot buy these materials themselves free of sales tax. Okay. This applies to you as a farmer that's buying the materials so that you may use them in order to construct things on your farm or your other agricultural operation. Okay. So that's a big deal. It's very specific. So if you have a contractor working for you, that's not going to work out for you. Okay. This is only for you and your exemption. All right. So down the list here real quick, other things like repair services and warranties that you might buy, software, of course, a lot of equipment nowadays, particularly newer tractors, there's high tech involved, and you guys know that. So you've got a lot of that too. Old time grain bins, attachment to the grain bins. How about aircraft, crop dusters? How about that? That's a big deal. That would be kind of expensive, and it'd be good to save sales tax on that too. Trailers are always exempt on an agricultural certificate. And then there's a few other things that are listed in the law as well that are exempt as well too. But essentially what's happening here, y'all, is that the Tennessee legislature, as a result of this change and the other legislation that they've done over the years, has basically said, hey, farmers, nursery operators, timber harvesters, we don't want you to pay sales tax generally. Okay. We support your operation. We like what you do. We want to save you money, and here's how we're doing it. Okay. So this is opened up just a little bit wider for you guys so that you can get the full effect of this exemption, and that you're able to take full advantage of it, because that's what the legislature wants you to do. Okay. Just want to make sure you guys know kind of the purpose behind all this too. So just to bring this back up here one more time, the qualifying items that we just talked about have to be used primarily 50% or more in agricultural operations. Okay. And we're talking about using them, with your land and your building machineries, and in connection with the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock too. And then of course, the definition in our sales tax law of what is a farm product and what is nursery stock is on screen here for you too. It's what you would normally think of as being typically exempt. Okay. So that's how that works. Now, agricultural operations does not mean recreation or educational activities on land used for the commercial production of farm products and nursery stock. So I think of things like corn mazes and things of that nature, stuff like that. And then, of course, it goes on to talk a little bit about that in the second bullet there too. So these type of entertainment activities that are in conjunction with is not part of your agricultural operation. So when you talk about trying to apply this 50% test to what you're doing, this is something you need to consider. So is my farm really producing lots of product, and is it more than 50%? Yes. Okay, so it's going to qualify. But some operations might not, because they may be doing more not education, but entertainment related activities versus actually producing products. Okay. So just keep that in mind, that there's a difference there. Now, there's actually some items that are listed in the law and in our notices and our manuals and things like that that don't qualify for the exemption. And the one at the top is the one we get all the time. Automobiles and farm trucks and things like that. If it's a motor vehicle, it doesn't qualify. Now, ATVs and side-by-sides and things like that, they will qualify. They will qualify to be exempt. So as long as they're used for an agricultural purpose, okay? Household appliances, never. You cannot take that. Gasoline or diesel used on the public highways, you cannot buy and receive the agricultural exemption for that, for sales tax. Lawnmowers are kind of tricky. Okay. We used to, back in the old days, sort of say lawnmowers, no, absolutely not. Okay. But let's look at what it says now. Lawnmowers designed for residential use that are used 50% or more of the time for non-agricultural purposes, such as mowing lawns and landscaped areas. So we can't say every lawnmower is exempt. We also can't say every lawnmower is taxable. It's the use of that lawnmower that determines whether it is or not. And who's going to know that? It's going to be you as the certificate holder. Okay. So if you go and present that certificate to the lawnmower business to buy that lawnmower, and they accept that, and you use it mostly for your home lawn, then if our auditors catch that, then they will make an assessment. Okay. So just do it for the right reason, along with all these other items that we're talking about today too. And then clothing would not be qualified either. Your coveralls, your boots, and different things like that you might wear out in the field, or wear certain types of other clothing, are just not going to qualify using the agricultural exemption. Okay. All right. So here's the resources. I won't walk you out there to that web page yet, but just to understand that under tax resources, we have tax manuals, important notices. We also have our 10-tap system, which is where you register and file and pay taxes to us, which of course, in our case, we're talking about an exemption, so not so much there too. But the revenue help area that you see over here on the side, that's where you can click and submit a question to us. And you can also turn in scanned documents with your application form and that sort of stuff there too. Also, just to let you know, under tax resources there at the top, you can find tax specific forms. And under sales tax, you'll find the agricultural exemption application form there too. And if you have other questions about other taxes, under the taxes section here, you can find loads of information on our website. All right. And that's how you contact us there too. Our website is tn.gov/revenue. Our email is revenue.support@tn.gov. We're real proud about our email service, y'all. If you send us an email, we should get back to you within that day to be able to address your question or situation that you've got there too. If you have something that you really want to talk to us about immediately during the day from 8 to 4:30 Central Time every business day, you can call our general call center at 615-253-0600. Our tax registration area, which is if you have questions about the application form or anything on that form, it's better to call that group. Same hours, 8 to 4:30. Slightly different phone number, just ends in 01 instead of 00. Okay. So that's pretty much the presentation there. I know that we've got some questions asked in here too. Rachel, did you want me to go through some of the questions?
Yes. So I can read these questions aloud and have you answer them if that works for you.
Okay, sure.
Perfect. So the first one is, would agricultural products cover goat milk soap? Well,
that's a great question. I don't know the context of the way the person is asking the question, but if you are producing goat milk soap, I think might be what you're trying to say is, can I buy products that allow me to do that? Well, if you're a farmer and you're producing the raw products of the goat milk and you're taking care of the goats, then I think anything relative to that would be exempt. Now, the one thing that we have to understand too is we're talking about the exemption for acquiring products that you're using in your agricultural operation, okay? What we're not talking about is the sale of products that you might be selling from whatever you're doing, okay? So I'm not to go down a rabbit hole here or anything with you, but to let you know, that's apples and oranges. Okay. So when you're selling products of your farm, things that you have raised, like if I were to set up a roadside stand on the edge of my cornfield and sell corn every July to people that come by and sell it by a dozen ears and all that, whatever. You know what? That's exempt. That's never subject to sales tax. Okay. One of the funnier examples we use in some training classes here is, well, what if we've got that farmer in Tennessee that's set up a roadside stand and sells pineapples? Well, y'all are probably smart enough to figure out, you don't really raise pineapples in Tennessee, y'all. It'd be quite a trick to do that, wouldn't it? So since we don't do that, those would be taxable. So you have to understand that too. And then, of course, things that you're producing that are things that are outside of the agricultural raw products, like let's say apples versus apple pies. An apple pie is taxable. If I go to a grocery store and buy an apple pie, I'm paying sales tax, right? Well, same thing if I buy that from a farmer who sells me an apple pie, it's still taxable. Okay. Now, the apples that are on that apple farm are not taxable. Okay. I hope that makes sense and just kind of let you delineate what the difference is between that two. Rachel, the next one I see, I think I've pulled this up here. It says, would agricultural products cover herd shares? I don't know what that means. So I would have to ask that person to reply back and give us some more information, unless you happen to know what it means, Rachel.
So I believe they are asking the herd share being a milk, typically herd share. Someone is buying a share of a herd in order to receive raw milk. So I believe they are asking if that would qualify as an agricultural product.
If we're talking, are we talking about the sale of that herd share, or are we talking? I
believe so, yes. So the sale of the herd share.
So that gets back into what we were just talking about there. And if that herd share represents the equivalent of the sale of a raw product, like the milk from that herd, from that share and that sort of thing, I think that if it's a raw product, it's not subject to sales tax. But if it's some other product that would be other than a raw product, it would be taxable. Sounds like it would be a raw product to me, based on what you're telling me there too.
Yes, I believe so as well. But again, please make sure you are following all regulations with herd shares. Again, the sale of raw milk is illegal in the state of Tennessee for human consumption. The next question is, are value-added products considered towards the $1,500 in agricultural products, or does it need to be raw produce?
It would be raw produce.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what sort of fencing qualifies? Is mobile fencing okay, or is it only for permanent fencing?
All types of fencing.
So again, all types of fencing would be tax exempt.
It would be, as long as it's used for an agricultural purpose. I always stress that because people sometimes get a little bit happy with this and they're like, I've got the magic certificate and I can do anything I want. No, it's not that way. And you want to be very careful and make sure that when I put that fence up, that I'm not just putting up a pretty ornate fence around my house, around the in-ground pool, as an example. Maybe you're trying to keep a cow out. I don't know. But besides that, I think you want to be real careful about that kind of thing. Okay.
So the next question here is, what about beekeepers and their specialized suits and gloves? Would that be tax exempt?
I believe if that is for that specialized purpose and directly connected to the raising of that harvestable honey product, that we could be okay with that. That's a little bit different than Wrangler blue jeans and barn boots and et cetera. So I think that would be an acceptable use. Okay.
The next one is, how do you pay taxes on what you sell?
Wow, that's a very nebulous question, but I can tell you the TIN-TAP system, TNTAP, that I showed you on the other slide,
Yes.
is where you actually file and pay the taxes, and you do need to register with us. So obtaining the exemption certificate is completely different than obtaining a registration certificate to report sales of things that are actually taxable. Now, just keep in mind too that if you're selling raw products from your farming operation or your nursery or timber harvesting operation, then you're not subject to sales tax. You don't need to register with us. You don't report it. Okay. So if all you're doing is raising crops and then you're selling that grain or that livestock, and you're not doing anything other than dealing with raw products, you don't have to register for sales tax. You just want that exemption form. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. So the next one is, are we able to backtrack on exemptions if the products that qualify have already been purchased? So are they able to recoup any of those costs?
It would depend. And let me give you an example. So when you submit an application form to us for a certificate, you're going to put on there the date that your operations began, and we'll be using that date to use on your certificate. Okay, so let's make believe here for just a second that your actual operations began in 2022 as opposed to 2023. So once you get your certificate, and let's say that you had bought something in late 2022 that you had already paid tax on, if that dealer is willing to accept your now certificate that's dated as of something before whenever the date was that you'd bought your item, then they can refund you that money and claim it as a credit on their sales tax return. That's allowable. Okay. But if they're not willing to do it, they don't have to do it. There's nothing in the law that says that they must do it. Okay. So I guess maybe is really the answer to that. It's not a real great answer, but it is the answer. Okay.
Perfect. So the next one is, would central heat or HVAC for a building used 100% for farm purposes be considered building materials?
I think it would. Under the new law, I believe that it would be because it would be part of that farming operation bought by a qualified farmer or agricultural operator, so to speak. I would imagine it would fit right in there.
Great. How do you pay taxes on apple pie?
It's easy. If you go to the grocery store, you just pull out your wallet. But I don't think that's what the question was. So that gets back to the whole idea of filing on that 10 tap system. If you're qualified to collect our sales tax and need to collect our sales tax on these value added products, when you've added other ingredients to that raw product and made a sale of something different than the raw product, then yeah, you would use the 10 tap system.
Great. So the next one, current tax cards that producers currently hold are scheduled to expire December 2023. Will they automatically renew and the producer will get a new card in the mail?
I already answered that question. So James and others, I'll just tell you again. Yeah, we're going to send those new ones out, and it'll probably be the fall. I can't tell you exactly when. My best guess would be September, October, something like that. And we'll send them out to the last known address. But here's a little commercial for you. And this is odd, and maybe you haven't figured it out, but we don't have a crystal ball here at the Department of Revenue. For instance, if you move, we don't know you moved until you tell us you moved. Okay. Why is that important? Well, when we get ready to send you out your new card and we send it to the address you used to be at and you don't get it, we have a problem, right? So I know that sounds sort of basic, but believe you me, when we send out, 15,000, I don't know how many, but that sounds about right, agricultural exemption cards, and we get back 2,000 of them undelivered mail, there's usually a reason, okay? So let us know if your address has changed, okay? That's very important too. Another thing that we didn't talk about, and let me bring it up real quick, is if you change the business structure of what you're doing on your farm, you need to send us another application form. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you were operating your farm as a sole proprietor, and you decided with the help of your accountant or your CPA or somebody that you want to start an LLC. Okay, great, no problem. But what you have to do is you have to make an application for us or with us, number one, for franchise and excise tax for that LLC. That's another story. And then also, we need to set you up with a sales tax exemption card that's in the name of the LLC, not your name. Okay. So, in other words, when you go and make tax exempt purchases of these products, your documentation along with your method of payment needs to line up exactly right. Okay. If you're John Doe farmer and you're paying with a check or a credit card from John Doe, you're awesome. That's perfect. Okay. But if you are Doe Farms LLC and you're paying with a check that says John Doe, that's not exactly right. Okay. So some of these suppliers are going to balk at that, and then you're going to have a problem. Okay. So make sure you've got everything lined up and square, and we can push this paperwork through quicker than you think we can. Okay. So if you help us and give us everything that we need to help you out on it, we'll knock it out for you. Okay. We don't sit around on stuff for weeks and weeks, y'all. We get stuff done, and we're proud of what our registration unit does for us. Okay.
Great, thank you. So the next one, do you have to pay sales tax on livestock sold, or is it only on produce and other raw products?
No, livestock, farm animals under the law, it's treated in exactly the same way as an ear of corn or a carrot or a cow. Same idea.
Next, do I understand correctly that selling goat milk soap made from milk from my own goats raised on my farm, would I need to collect sales tax from buyers and submit sales tax for what I sell from my farm?
Yeah, possibly, because my guess is that soap has got something more in it than just the goat milk. I would say it's probably got additives, probably some sort of scent, something like that you're adding to that. So that's a value added product. So that's subject to sales tax generally in Tennessee, just like the apple pie would be. Okay, same idea.
Okay, the next one, if a person is filing taxes from their farm, does one still need to pay taxes collected on value-added products through 10 TAP?
Okay, let me think about that. A person is filing taxes for their farm. Does one still need to pay taxes? I guess yes. Let me tell you why I think what I think they might be asking about. It may be that you're talking about federal taxes and you're filing taxes federally and things of that nature. So that's the federal level. But you do pay taxes collected on value-added products through 10 TAP for sales tax, for Tennessee sales tax on those products that you're selling. Again, not the raw products, but just the taxable products. Okay. So as you can see, like we talked about earlier, it's not a one size fits all, because some of you may be doing some things that are taxable and a whole bunch of the rest of you are not. And you're just looking for this tax exemption.
So one just popped up to follow up on that. How often do you file taxes through 10 TAP, quarterly or annually?
It depends on how we set you up when you register with us. Typically, most taxpayers that file sales tax with us actually file monthly, and the tax return is due by the 20th of the following month. Now, some are set up quarterly, which is the 20th of the month that follows the quarter, regular calendar year quarter. Very rarely will we do it yearly, and those are due January 20th of the following year. Yeah, but typically monthly is the answer on that.
Okay. If I'm selling farm products to a customer, milk, soap, jams, bakery items, do I need to charge taxes?
Well, we just sort of answered that.
Yes.
So it's the same idea. It's if you've added something to that, I think water, sugar, pectin are the things listed in the sales tax law that are okay. But once you get outside of water, sugar, pectin, or any other type of just preservative, then you're going to enter a taxable situation. Okay.
Yes. The next one, would a bouquet of flowers be considered the same as an ear of corn when it comes to taxes? And I do just want to make a note, when those flowers are being sold, you do want to be aware of any jars or vases that would be included or not included. So let's consider that as well.
Oh, that's 100% right. Thank you, Rachel. So yeah, if you were growing flowers and you're selling the flowers that you grew, if you're just handing raw flowers over to somebody, that's not subject to sales tax. But that vase that you put it in very well may be. Okay. And if you're selling it all as one product, like here is a bouquet of flowers in a vase, the entire thing is subject to sales tax. Okay. Now, here's one thing to keep in mind, too, that sometimes people lose track of. When we ask you to collect sales tax, we're asking you as a dealer to collect it. And yes, you are responsible for it, but typically you're going to pass that along to the customer. So just make sure you're charging the customer this sales tax, because we're not really asking you to come out of pocket for this money. We're asking you to ask the customer for extra money so that you can send it to us. Okay. So just realize that it's an obligation that you have, but it's not like it's literally coming just directly out of your pocket, if that makes any sense.
Yes. So again, for a bouquet of flowers, I personally would recommend, if you want to show them or view them at a farmer's market, in a mason jar or a vase of some kind, but the vase does not come with that bouquet, so that you are not subject to that sales tax. So
Right.
Again, display it, make it beautiful, but then they just get the flowers.
Absolutely.
The next one, if we grow cucumbers and then process them on the farm and make them into pickles, are they subject to sales tax?
Probably, because my guess is you're going to be adding something more than water, sugar, pectin, preservatives. So that would make them taxable. Sure would. And also it'd be kind of hard to hand them, them a handful of pickles, wouldn't it? So yeah.
So yes, that jar is also taxable. Twine and paper wrapping the bouquet would be sales tax. I guess that's a question. Yes.
Yes, technically, that's really, really stretching it, though. I don't know if we'd have a whole lot of auditors that would. If you had old newspapers that you put the flowers in, are you now selling the newspaper? Y'all, no, we're not going to worry about that. Okay, just be smart. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So again, if it's a vase or something like that, you might be more subject to an audit. But again, twine, paper, probably going to let that one go. Okay. The next one, we don't need to charge tax on jarred jam, but we do need to for flowers in a jar. The jar, again, is something other than sugar and pectin and water. So the jar for jam would be taxed, correct?
Yeah, it would be. And yeah, you just want to be real careful about that. That's correct.
Okay. The carton of eggs for eggs, is that taxable? We are splitting hairs.
How about we don't worry about a carton for eggs, y'all? I mean, I don't think the Tennessee legislature would go out here and try to give you exemptions for things for raw products of a farm and ask you to go to that nth degree like that, guys. You know what I'm saying? Trying to lose a little bit of common sense approach on this too. Letter of the law, maybe, but let's not think about it like that. I think our auditors and folks up here would be like, kind of be okay with that, and that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd see one other question up here too, Rachel, about this presentation being the same one scheduled for next week. It actually is. It's very close to it. It'll be maybe just a little bit different. We're going to have someone that works in our registration area that's going to bring up some of the things that sometimes people miss when they put in an application form with us, common questions. It'll be maybe a hair bit deeper than this, but essentially it's the same thing.
And Billy, if you will send me that information, then I can include that in the follow-up email. If you would like to, join for that session on the 31st, then,
Yeah,
you're
Rachel,
happy to do so.
something you might find interesting is yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we
Mhm.
should have sent an email out to everybody in this state that holds a farmer's agricultural exemption card that says, hey, we're going to have this thing next week. But yes, I'll be glad to send that information to you, Rachel. We actually have it out on our website. As a matter of fact, why don't I just do this? Let's see, Department of Revenue. Look here. Can you see my screen there and see our revenue
Yes.
website?
Yes.
Taxpayer education down here at the bottom. Clicking on that. Tax webinars right here. And look at this. Tax webinar, Tennessee's agricultural sales tax. And that blue box right here that I'm turning red, register
Yes.
for this event. That's how you do it. But yeah, if you want to come, hey, you're welcome to come. I don't want you to be bored because it will be a repeat. But at the same time, that's okay. You're welcome to come. Yeah, and people that you know that are in your industry that didn't come today that might want to come also,
Yes.
come check us out. We'll be glad to talk to you. Absolutely.
And again, you all offer some great other sessions. So again, you can see the other upcoming webinars. So again, if you know someone else in a different line of work that would be interested in these free educational programs, again, take them to this website that he's showing so you can register.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, last question here. If a dealer or vendor refuses your tax exemption that qualifies for an exemption, is there a different way to get refunded?
The answer on that is there is only one way of doing it, and that is for a very expensive item that would be subject to, I think it's more than $2,500 of tax. And you have to make a request of the person 2 different times. They have to refuse you. Then after that, you can file a claim for refund with us. So if it's a really expensive item that you paid a lot of sales tax on, there is that remedy. But besides that, there is not a remedy for it. Sorry about that.
Okay, since there's no other questions, we are done for the day. If you have any other questions, do feel free to reach out to myself or Billy.